Welcome to Grammar 5J. This will be your second review book of the Grammar 5 series, so we're just going to review a few things and then work on some sentence diagramming. So, you have learned a lot of verbals. You've actually learned all of the verbals you're going to be learning in this level. So let's review those very quickly. We have about 4 different types. We have infinitives, past participles, present participles, and gerunds. So let's just run through this list. Each of these are examples you've seen in previous booklets and videos. First one is infinitives. Remember, infinitives can act as nouns, adjectives, and adverbs. So let's look at the first one, an example of an infinitive as a noun. My favorite pastime is to read. To read is the PN of the sentence. Remember, since infinitives can act like nouns, they can also act as subjects and as direct objects. The book to read is in the library. In this instance, to read is modifying the book, making it an adjective. I went to the library to read. To read is modifying a verb. It's telling you why you are going or why I am going. And then, of course, this book is fun to read, modifying how fun it is or why it is fun. And so in that sense, it is acting as an adverb, modifying an adjective. Then we have our participles. First is a past participle. Justin will eat burned toast. Notice that it's always acting as an adjective, modifying a noun, in this instance, toast. The swimming pool was full. Swimming, once again, a present participle acting as an adjective, is modifying pool, the subject of the sentence. And then lastly, we have gerunds. Running is my favorite exercise. These verbs will only act as nouns. Now that you have all of this reminders of verbals, we can start applying it with the other thing you learned about in this quarter of Grammar 5, phrases. Phrases are interesting, exciting, kind of complicated. Each phrase is going to act as its own part of speech or function as something within the sentence, and then within it will have parts to it. So we're going to review the additions of phrases that we've learned so far. At the top we have to be creative can get you a good job. As you can see, the entire phrase is acting as the subject of the sentence. Within the phrase, we have to be as our verbal and creative is our predicate adjective. Underneath that, we have her being a teacher has improved test scores, once again acting as the subject. And then if we look at the phrase itself, our verbal being has a subject, her, and a predicate nominative, which is renaming the subject within the phrase. And then lastly, we have a present participial phrase, winning the trophy, the team was humble. Winning the trophy, our phrase, is modifying the team. And then within the phrase itself has a direct object, trophy. Trophy is receiving the action of being won. So once again, as I've said in every other video, whenever you're working with phrases, take your time, make sure you're analyzing what the phrase is, what it is doing in that sentence, and what is inside that phrase. Now let's look at some sentence diagramming with phrases. Here we have our blank sentence diagram, and you will be asked to fill in the functions of speech on the diagram. So start with your basics, which is your subjects and your verbs. And as you can see in this one, we do have 2 verbs. We have a compound verb, compound direct object situation going on. So we'll fill in our subject. And coming off of our subject is a participial phrase. And since we know participles are always acting as adjectives, I can label the entire phrase as adjective. Notice I put it on the curved spot. You can also put it on the horizontal line if you would like to, but only put adjective once. Then we have a verb. And after that verb, we have a short horizontal line. That shows me that we are going to have a direct object after our verb. So I'm going to label that entire infinitive phrase as a DO. Once again, it doesn't matter where you put the DO, just put it once. And then we have a conjunction coordinating our 2 verbs. So I'm going to write conjunction and our verb. And then once again, we have a short horizontal line. So once again, our gerund phrase is also a direct object. I'm just putting it in one spot. And now we can apply this diagram to an actual sentence. Wanting dessert, Felicity had to be good and finished eating her dinner. So, like I said before, I like to start with my basics. I've got my subject, Felicity, and what is she doing in this sentence? Well, she's having to do something, and then she's also finishing something. So now we can focus in on what is being had and what is being finished. What is having to be done? You have to be good. So that entire phrase is acting as a direct object. But within the phrase itself, I have to be as my verbal, which means I'm going to have either a PN or a PA. And since we have good coming after the verbal, that means we have a predicate adjective. And then what needs to be finished? Eating her dinner. That entire phrase is going to be our phrase, our gerund phrase, and the direct object for that verb. And then within it, we have eating her dinner. Dinner is receiving the action of being eaten. So I am going to label that as a DO within the phrase, which is a DO. And then our last phrase, wanting dessert, we know that this cannot be a gerund phrase. It's not functioning as anything in this sentence. So I'm going to bracket it, and I realize that it's modifying Felicity. And then within it, we have dessert, a noun. What's happening to that noun? It's receiving an action, therefore it is a direct object. Now we know we're going to be using the exact same sentence diagram as before, so I'm going to go ahead and copy and paste that there, and we can start filling it out. We have our subject and our first verb, had, and since we have our infinitive phrase as the direct object, I'm going to fill that out, to be, and notice how it's that slanted line because good is a PA in this phrase, and is our coordinating conjunction, and our second verb is finished. Once again, we have a direct object for the phrase. So we have eat and then ing on the bottom step. And then, of course, we have a direct object within the phrase itself. Dinner is receiving the action of the verbal, and then her is modifying dinner. And then last thing we need to do is find our modifier for our subject, which is going to be wanting dessert. Notice that short line because dessert is a direct object of this phrase. So that is how you would, one, identify the functions of that sentence diagram, and then also how to apply a sentence to those diagrams. Be sure to ask whoever grades your grammar any questions you may have about this or any other grammar booklet.